Let's now go into details into what is DBT. DBT stands for Data Build Tool, and it's going to help us with the transformation of our data. So after we've done the extraction, the loading, we're going to have a lot of raw data in our data warehouse. And we need to transform this data to later expose it to our stakeholders and be able to perform analysis. And that transformation is going to be done with DBT. Not only is it going to help us to transform our data in the data warehouse, but also it's going to introduce the good software practices that we mentioned before. How it's going to do that? By defining a development workflow. We're going to develop our models, we're going to test and document them, and then we're going to have a deployment phase as well, where we are going to use version control, and we could also implement something like CI/CD as well. So how does it work? Imagine this is our data warehouse, and this is our raw data. We are adding this modeling layer where we're going to be transforming the data. And this model with the transformed data is being persisted back to the data warehouse. How's that happening? We're going to be writing SQL files. Those are going to be our DBT models. And in these SQL files, we can see here how they look. It's essentially a select statement. We're not going to be adding any DDL or DML. And DBT is going to compile that file. And then here we can see how it runs. And what it's doing here is compiling that code by creating the DDL or DML file, and it's going to push that compute to our data warehouse. And at the end, we're going to be able to see whether a table or a view in the warehouse. So how to use DBT? DBT Core is the essence of DBT. It's an open source project that allows the data transformation. This is the part of DBT that's going to build and run the project. So it's going to include the compilation logic. It's going to include several macros. So imagine macros are functions. And it's going to also have several database adapters. So you could change your project depending on the database you want to use. And DBT is going to compile the code, adapting it to the version you're using. It's also going to include a command line interface where we're going to run the DBT commands locally, like you saw in the picture before. And as it is open source, it's also free to use. There's also another part from DBT, which is the cloud. This is a web application where we can develop but also manage our DBT projects. It includes a web-based IDE to develop, run, and test our DBT project. It has also a scheduler included. It has logging and alerting. It's hosting the documentation that DBT is going to build for us. And it's free for individuals. So for one developer seat, you can have a free account. So how are we going to use DBT in this week? For the ones that were able to use BigQuery, we're going to be developing using the Cloud IDE. So no local installation of DBT Core, because we're going to be running and developing the whole project there. And we're also going to be able to do the deployment at the end and orchestration of those jobs in there. For the ones that are using Postgres, unfortunately, you cannot connect it, your local database to DBT Cloud. So you can use a local IDE of your choice, and you can install DBT locally. You will find the instructions in the repository. You're going to be running those models on the terminal, and you're going to be creating that in your Postgres database. At the end, our project will look something like this. We're going to have the trip data that you loaded already in your database, the yellow and the green taxi data. And we're going to also add a CSV file with the taxi zone lookup data. All of this is going to be our raw data, and we're going to use DBT to transform our data in our BigQuery data warehouse or Postgres. And then at the end, we're going to be able to expose it to a dashboard.